before the slap, before the mall, before Kevin found out exactly who he was dealing with. This is how it all began. 5 years ago, Nia Thompson was 7 months pregnant, homeless and abandoned in Seoul. The man who promised to love her forever stole her savings and disappeared, leaving her alone with nothing but a growing baby and a broken heart. Then one rainy afternoon, she saved a little boy from falling in the street. That little boy was Junho, the son of Kang Siwu, a cold, powerful Korean CEO with a tragic past. He hired her as a nanny, gave her a home, protected her, stayed by her side through an emergency C-section when her daughter Maya was born. And somewhere between midnight feedings and healing broken hearts, they became a family. But Siwu wasn't just a grieving widower. He was a man who had destroyed powerful enemies before. And when Nia told him what her ex had done to her, he made a promise. Anyone who hurts you answers to me. Now, 5 years later, that promise is about to be tested. Because the man who abandoned her just slapped her in public, and he has no idea whose wife she is. If you're ready to see what happens next, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The intensity in Siwoo's voice had made Nia shiver. Siwu said, "You're under my protection, Nia. Both of you. That's not just words. That's a promise. Anyone who hurts you answers to me." And looking into his eyes, Nia had believed him absolutely. 3 months later, Kevin had proven Siwu right. It had been late evening. Nia had been giving Maya a bath while Junho did homework in his room. Siwu had been in his office on a conference call. The building's front desk had called up. "Mrs. Kang, there's a Mr. Kevin Thompson here to see Ms. Nia Thompson. He says he's the father of her child and demands to see her immediately." Nia's blood had run cold. "Tell him I'm not available." "He's being quite insistent, ma'am. He's saying he has legal rights and I'll handle it." Siwoo's voice had cut in. He'd picked up the extension in his office. "Send him away. If he refuses to leave, call security and have him removed." "Sir, he's saying he'll call the police and claim—" "Let him," Siwu had said coldly. "I have security footage of every entrance to this building. If he sets foot on my property without permission, he's trespassing. Remove him. Hey, now." There had been a pause, then, "Yes, sir." But Nia had known Kevin, had known he wouldn't give up that easily. "I need to go down there," she'd said, wrapping Maya in a towel, "before he causes a scene." "Absolutely not," Siwu had said, appearing in the bathroom doorway. "You're not going anywhere near him." "Siwu, he won't leave unless I face him. You don't know how he is when he's determined. He'll make a scene, get other residents involved, maybe even—" "Then I'll go down," Siwu had said firmly. "You stay here with the children. He'll just come back another time. Let me talk to him. Find out what he wants. End this now." Siwu had looked like he wanted to argue, but finally he'd nodded. "Fine, but I'm coming with you. And Nia—" His expression had been carved from ice. "You don't negotiate with him. You don't promise him anything. You don't let him manipulate you. Understood?" Nia had nodded, and together they'd gone down to the lobby, leaving Junho in charge of watching his sleeping baby sister. Kevin had been in the marble lobby, looking prosperous in an expensive suit, his hair styled, his shoes polished. He'd looked successful and confident and nothing like the man who'd abandoned her. "Nia," he'd said when he'd seen her, his smile wide. "You look good. Really good. Motherhood suits you." "What do you want, Kevin?" Nia had asked, staying close to Siwu. "I want to talk about our daughter," Kevin had said, his gaze flicking to Siwu with obvious curiosity. "I've done a lot of thinking over the past few months. I made mistakes, big ones, but I'm ready to step up now. Be a father." Nia had laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "You're ready to step up? Now? After you abandoned me when I was 3 months pregnant? After you stole my money and left me homeless?" "I was scared," Kevin had said, his expression earnest in a way that had made Nia's skin crawl. It was the same look he'd used when lying to her before. "I made terrible choices, but I'm in a better place now. I'm engaged to an amazing woman, Charlotte Lee, from the Lee Industries family. She wants children, wants a ready-made family. I told her about you, about the baby. Her name is Maya," Nia had interrupted. "And no, you don't get to waltz back into our lives because it's suddenly convenient for you." She's my daughter, too, Kevin had insisted, his voice rising. I have legal rights, parental rights. You can't just keep her from me. You abandoned those rights when you left, Siwu had said quietly, speaking for the first time. Kevin had turned to him, really looking at him for the first time. And who the hell are you? Her sugar daddy? The guy paying for this fancy building? I'm the man who was there when you weren't, Siwu had said, his voice soft and deadly. I'm the man who held her hand through labor, who paid for her hospital care, who stayed up nights with a screaming infant while you were spending her money on your new life. Kevin's face had reddened. That's none of your business. Nia is my business, Siwu had said, stepping forward. Maya is my business. They live under my roof, under my protection. That makes you my business. Your protection? Kevin had sneered. What are you, the mob? Please. You're just some rich Korean guy who bought himself a family. But that baby is mine, my blood. And I have rights. Try it, Siwu had said softly. Try to take her to court. Try to claim parental rights. See what happens. What, you'll buy off the judges? Use your money to… I won't have to, Siwu had interrupted. Because I have documentation of every call Nia made that you ignored. Every message you blocked. Every penny you stole from her. I have medical records showing she nearly died from stress during her pregnancy. I have testimony from the shelter where she stayed because you left her homeless. Kevin had gone pale. How do you… I know everything about you, Kevin Thompson. Where you work, where you live, who you're engaged to, how much debt you're hiding from her family, every lie you've told. Siwu had smiled, and it had been terrifying. If you try to claim parental rights, I'll make sure all of that becomes public record. I'll make sure Charlotte's family knows exactly who you are. I'll make sure you never work in this city again. You can't threaten me, Kevin had blustered, but his voice had shaken. I'm not threatening you, Siwu had said. I'm making you a promise. Leave, now. Never contact Nia again. Never mention having a daughter. Forget we exist. Or I will systematically destroy every aspect of your life until you have nothing left but regrets. Kevin had looked between Siwu and Nia, and whatever he'd seen in Siwu's eyes had made his bravado crumble. This isn't over, he'd said to Nia. You think you can hide behind him forever? You think he really cares about you? He just wants… Get out, Siwu had said, and his voice dropping to a whisper that had somehow been louder than shouting. Get out of my building before I have you thrown out. And if you ever come near my family again, you'll learn exactly who I am and what I'm capable of. Kevin had backed toward the door, trying to maintain some dignity. You'll regret this, both of you. Then he'd been gone, disappearing into the Seoul night. Nia had been shaking, adrenaline and old trauma making her legs weak. Siwu had caught her elbow, steadying her. Are you all right? He'd asked, his voice gentle now, all the cold fury gone. You called us your family, Nia had whispered. Siwu had looked down at her, and in his eyes she'd seen something that had made her breath catch. You are my family, he'd said simply. You and Maya and Junho. That's what you are to me. Siwu, Nia had started, not even knowing what she wanted to say. Let's go home, Siwu had said softly. Let's go back to our children. Our children, not his and hers, ours. And in that moment, walking back to the elevator, Siwu's hand gentle on her elbow, Nia had realized she was in love with him. Completely, hopelessly, terrifyingly in love. But Siwu was her employer, her protector, the man who'd saved her from homelessness and given her a life. Telling him how she felt would ruin everything. So she'd kept quiet, buried her feelings deep, and tried to be content with what she had. Meanwhile, Siwu had made a phone call that night, after Nia had gone to bed. I need a full background investigation, he'd said to his head of security. Kevin Thompson, everything. Employment history, financial records, criminal background, associates, weaknesses. I want to know how to destroy him completely if he ever threatens my family again. Yes, sir. Anything else? Siwu had looked toward Nia's closed door, thinking about how she'd felt in his arms, how she'd defended him, how she'd made his cold world warm again. If he comes within 100 meters of this building again, I want to know immediately. Understood, sir. Siwu had hung up and stood in the darkness of his penthouse, wrestling with feelings he'd thought died with his wife. He'd fallen in love with Nia somewhere between her making Junho laugh and her holding his hand while he'd grieved. He'd fallen in love with her strength, her kindness, her fierce protection of her daughter. But she'd been through hell. She deserved time to heal, to build her life, to figure out who she was beyond survival. So Siwu had made himself a promise. He would protect her, provide for her, care for her. But he wouldn't pressure her, wouldn't confess feelings she might not return. He would wait. And if Kevin ever came back, Siwu would make sure the man regretted ever being born. 4 years passed in a blur of domesticity that felt almost surreal in its normalcy. Maya grew from a tiny preemie into a bright, energetic little girl who charmed everyone she met. Junho became a confident teenager who adored his little sister and treated Nia like she was his mother in every way that mattered. And Nia and Siwu circled each other like planets caught in each other's gravity, both aware of the pull but afraid to acknowledge it. Until one night, when Maya was 2 years old, Siwu had found Nia crying in the kitchen at midnight. "What's wrong?" he'd asked, immediately concerned. "Is it Maya? Are you sick?" "No," Nia had said, wiping her eyes. I got a letter today. From immigration. My visa is up for renewal and they're questioning whether my work visa is still valid since I'm technically living here as a nanny, but I'm not registered with any agency and..." She'd broken down again, and Siwu had pulled her into his arms without thinking. "I can't go back to America." Nia had sobbed against his chest. "My whole life is here. Maya's life is here. Junho needs me. She'd stopped, biting back whatever she'd been about to say. Siwu had pulled back just enough to look at her face. "Me what?" "Nothing. It doesn't matter." "It matters to me," Siwu had said. "Nia, whatever you were going to say it." "You need me," Nia had whispered. "You and Junho and this family we've built. I can't leave you. I can't..." Siwu had kissed her. It had been desperate and gentle and everything he'd been holding back for 2 years. When they'd finally broken apart, both breathing hard, Nia had stared at him in shock. "I love you," Siwu had said, the words tumbling out. "I've loved you for so long I can't remember when it started. Maybe when you made Junho laugh. Maybe when you held my hand while I grieved. Maybe the moment you caught my son in the rain. But I love you, Nia. I'm in love with you." "I love you too," Nia had whispered. "I've been in love with you for years. I just didn't think you could ever..." "Marry me," Siwu had interrupted. Nia had laughed through her tears. "What?" "Marry me, legally, not just for the visa, though that solves the visa problem, but because I want you to be my wife. I want Maya to be my daughter. I want us to be a family in every way, not just in our hearts." Siwu had cupped her face. "I can't promise I'll be easy to love. I have a dark past and enemies and parts of my life I've kept hidden from you. But I can promise I'll love you with everything I am. I'll protect you and Maya and give you the life you deserve. Marry me, Nia. Please." "Yes?" Nia had said without hesitation. "Yes. 1,000 times yes." They'd gotten married at the courthouse the next week. A simple ceremony with just Junho and Maya and 2 witnesses. Siwu had slipped a ring on Nia's finger that had belonged to his grandmother, and Nia had cried happy tears. That night, Siwu had legally adopted Maya, giving her his name. Kang Maya, his daughter-in-law and in love, and their life had settled into something beautiful. Nia had continued to be cautious about Siwu's business interests. She'd known he was wealthy, knew he had connections and power that seemed outsized even for a legitimate CEO. But she'd trusted him, loved him, and hadn't asked too many questions. Siwu, for his part, had kept the darker aspects of his empire hidden from her. She'd known he ran Kang Corporation, a massive conglomerate with interests in real estate, tech, and finance. She hadn't known that underneath that legitimate surface was a network that controlled much of Seoul's underground economy. He'd wanted to protect her from that darkness, keep her hands clean, but he'd also quietly used that power to make her life better. Her small online business selling handmade children's clothes? Siwu had used his connections to get her products into major department stores. Nia had thought it was her talent and hard work, and it was. but Siwu had opened doors that would have stayed closed. Her student loans from her failed teaching program? Siwu had paid them off from an untraceable account. Her mother's medical bills in Atlanta? Siwu had set up a trust that covered everything, disguised as a charity program. Nia's life had blossomed in ways she'd never imagined, and she'd attributed it to luck, hard work, and Siwu's love. She hadn't realized the extent to which he'd been orchestrating her success from the shadows, until the day Kevin had destroyed that carefully maintained ignorance. 5 years after that night in the lobby, Nia had taken Maya shopping at the luxury Gangnam Mall, the kind of place she'd once thought she'd never be able to afford. But her business was thriving. Siwu insisted she buy herself nice things, and Maya deserved a special birthday shopping trip. They'd been in a toy store, Maya excitedly pointing out dolls and stuffed animals, when Nia had turned a corner and collided with someone. "I'm so sorry," she'd started to say in Korean. Then her voice had died in her throat. Because she knew that face. Kevin. He'd aged well. Designer suit, expensive watch, perfectly styled hair. He'd been holding hands with a beautiful Korean woman who radiated wealth and privilege. For a moment, they'd just stared at each other. Then Kevin's expression had shifted from polite apology to shock to something ugly. "Nia?" His voice had been too loud, attracting attention. "What the hell are you doing here?" The woman beside him, Charlotte, Nia would learn later, had looked confused. "Kevin, do you know her?" "Yeah, I know her," Kevin had said, his eyes scanning Nia from head to toe, taking in her designer clothes, her expensive bag, her confidence. "Last I saw her, she was homeless. Guess she found a new mark." Nia had felt Maya's small hand grip hers tighter. "Kevin, I don't want any trouble. We were just leaving." She'd tried to step around him, but Kevin had moved to block her path. "Not so fast. I asked you a question. How can you afford to shop here? What rich guy are you sponging off now?" "That's none of your business," Nia had said, keeping her voice calm for Maya's sake. "Please move." "It is my business if you're using my kid to scam some poor fool," Kevin had said, his voice rising. Charlotte had been watching with growing alarm, other shoppers stopping to stare. "She's not your kid," Nia had said quietly. "You made that very clear 5 years ago." "The hell she's not. Look at her. She's what, 5? 6? That's my daughter you've been hiding from me, you lying." If you're loving this story of justice and second chances, hit that like button and drop a comment letting me know what you think should happen to Kevin. And trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next. "Don't call my mama names," Maya had suddenly shouted, stepping in front of Nia with her little hands on her hips. "You're a mean man." "Maya, baby, get behind me," Nia had said, trying to pull her daughter back. But Kevin had focused on Maya with an intensity that had made Nia's blood run cold. "You," he'd said, pointing at Maya. "You're mine, my daughter, and she's been keeping you from me, telling lies." "I'm not yours," Maya had said, her voice trembling but brave. "My appa is Kang Siwu. He's my real daddy." Kevin's face had gone pale, then red. "Kang? As in Kang Corporation? You married him?" "That's none of your business," Nia had repeated, finally managing to pull Maya behind her. "Like hell it's not," Kevin had snarled. "You gold-digging bitch. You were homeless and desperate. And now you're married to one of the richest men in Korea? How long did you have to spread your legs before he—" Nia had slapped him. Her hand had moved before her brain had caught up, the crack of palm against cheek echoing through the store. The entire mall had seemed to go silent. Kevin's head had snapped to the side, a red handprint blooming on his cheek. For a moment, he'd just stood there, stunned. Then he'd smiled, a terrible, cruel smile that Nia remembered from their worst fights. "Big mistake," he'd said softly, and then he'd slapped her back. The blow had sent Nia stumbling, her vision blurring, her cheek exploding with pain. She'd heard Maya scream, heard Charlotte gasp, heard the crowd's shocked murmurs. She'd caught herself against a shelf, tasting blood, trying to orient herself. "You think you can hit me?" Kevin had been advancing on her, his face twisted with rage. "You think your rich husband makes you untouchable? You're still the same trash you always were. Homeless, desperate, worthless." He'd raised his hand again, and Nia had closed her eyes, turning to shield Maya completely. But the second blow never came. Instead, she'd heard that voice, cold, accented, carrying the kind of authority that made the entire mall seem to hold its breath. Touch her again, and I'll remove the hand myself. Nia's eyes had opened, and there, standing between her and Kevin like winter-made flesh, was her husband, Kang Siwu. But not the Siwu who made her breakfast or kissed Maya goodnight. This was someone else. Someone whose presence made the air feel thin and dangerous. 6 men in black suits flanked him, clearly security, clearly armed. Behind them, visible through the mall's glass entrance, sat a line of black SUVs that screamed power and threat. Kevin had frozen, his raised hand still in the air, his face draining of color. Who? He'd started. I'm Kang Siwu. Siwu had said softly, his eyes never leaving Kevin's face. The man you just assaulted is my wife. The child you terrified is my daughter. And you've made a mistake so catastrophic, you'll spend the rest of your life regretting it. The crowd had pressed back, sensing danger, phones coming out to record. Siwu had turned slightly to look at Nia, and his expression had shifted from ice to concern in a heartbeat. Are you hurt? He'd asked, his voice gentle now. Nia had touched her throbbing cheek, felt the blood from her split lip. I'm okay. You're bleeding, Siwu had said, and something terrifying had flickered in his eyes. He made you bleed. One of his security team had stepped forward with a first aid kit, kneeling beside Nia to tend to her injuries while Siwu had turned back to Kevin. Do you know who I am? Siwu had asked conversationally. You're Kang Corporation? Kevin had stammered. I'm more than that, Siwu had said. Much more. But you don't know, do you? You just see the business empire, the legitimate front. You have no idea what else I control. Charlotte had grabbed Kevin's arm. Kevin, we should go, now. But Kevin, stupid with pride and panic, had tried to bluster. You can't threaten me. There are witnesses, cameras, you can't. I'm not threatening you, Siwu had said. I'm making you a promise. You hit my wife. In front of my daughter. In front of hundreds of witnesses. So now I'm going to systematically destroy every aspect of your life, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly why. You can't? I can, Siwu had interrupted. Because you work for Hanwoo Industries, which is a subsidiary of Kang Corporation, which means I'm your employer, which means I've had access to every financial transaction you've made for the past 3 years, including the $40,000 you've embezzled. Kevin's face had gone white. That's a lie. It's not, Siwu had said. I have receipts, bank records, emails, everything. I've been watching you, Kevin, waiting to see if you'd be stupid enough to come near my family again. And you did, so now you pay the price. One of Siwu's men had handed him a tablet. Siwu had tapped a few buttons, and suddenly the mall's large advertising screens had switched to show financial documents, emails, bank transfers, all with Kevin's name on them. That's private, Kevin had shouted. Not anymore, Siwu had said calmly. Now it's public record. Now everyone knows what you are. A thief, a liar, an abuser. He'd tapped again, and the screens had switched to show something else. Surveillance footage from 5 years ago of Kevin laughing with friends in a bar, drunkenly bragging about dodging the baby bullet and ditching the gold digger. Kevin's own voice had echoed through the mall. Can you believe she thought I'd actually marry her? Homeless trash with a knocked-up belly? I took her money and ran. His friends on the video had laughed. The crowd in the mall had gasped. Charlotte had yanked her hand away from Kevin like he'd burned her. Oh my God. Kevin, you told me. You said she trapped you? That she faked the pregnancy? Charlotte, I can explain. You lied to me, Charlotte had shrieked. You told my father you came from a good family, that you had investments, that you were nothing like this. I do. I am. She's lying. This is all. The footage doesn't lie, Siwu had said coldly. The bank records don't lie. Your own words don't lie. You're the liar, Kevin. And now everyone knows. Kevin had looked around wildly, seeing the phones recording, the screens showing his crimes, the security team surrounding him. You can't do this. This is illegal. This is... Call the police, Siwu had suggested. Please, I have friends in the police department who would love to discuss your embezzlement. I also have friends in immigration who would be fascinated to learn you've been working on an expired visa. Kevin had frozen. How do you… I told you. I know everything about you. Siwu had stepped closer, and Kevin had stumbled backward. I know you're in debt. I know you've been stealing from Charlotte's father's company, too. I know about the other women you've scammed. I know about the fake credentials on your resume. I know everything. And now so does everyone else. He'd gestured, and his men had stepped forward, forcing Kevin to his knees. What are you doing? Kevin had shouted. You can't… There are witnesses. Good, Siwu had said. Let them watch. Let them record. Let the whole world see what happens to men who hurt my family. He'd looked down at Kevin with an expression of such cold fury that even Nia had felt a chill. You're going to apologize to my wife, Siwu had said softly, for every specific thing you did to her, every lie, every betrayal, every moment of suffering you caused. And you're going to mean it. Because if you don't, I promise you'll spend the next decade in prison, and your name will become synonymous with everything contemptible in this city. Kevin had looked up at Siwu, at the security team, at the crowd recording everything, at Charlotte backing away in disgust. And finally he'd understood. He wasn't getting out of this. Not with his pride, not with his job, not with his engagement. Everything he'd built on lies was crumbling, and the man standing over him had the power to destroy him completely. Kevin had choked on the words, tears starting to stream down his face. I'm sorry. Specifics, Siwu had commanded. Every single thing. Start with abandoning her when she was pregnant. And as Kevin had knelt there in the middle of the luxury mall, surrounded by cameras and witnesses and the wreckage of his lies, he'd begun to speak. The confession that would haunt him for the rest of his life. The reckoning he'd spent 5 years running from. The justice Nia had never thought she'd see. Kevin's voice cracked as he knelt on the cold marble floor, his expensive suit rumpled, his face wet with tears that no one believed were genuine. I'm sorry for abandoning you when you were 3 months pregnant, he began, his voice barely above a whisper but amplified by the silence of hundreds of watching strangers. I'm sorry for stealing the $7,000 from our joint account. I'm sorry for blocking your number when you called to tell me you were in labor. I'm sorry for… Louder, Siwu commanded. Everyone needs to hear this. Kevin's voice rose, shaking with humiliation. I'm sorry for leaving you homeless, for not caring if you lived or died, for laughing about it with my friends, for calling you trash, for telling everyone you faked the pregnancy when I knew you were really pregnant and suffering, and I didn't care. Nia stood perfectly still, Maya clutched against her side, watching the man who'd destroyed her break apart in public. I'm sorry for coming here today, Kevin continued, his words tumbling out faster now. For calling you names, for trying to claim Maya when I never wanted her, for hitting you, for what? Siwu prompted coldly. What did you call my wife? For calling you a gold digger, Kevin sobbed, looking at Nia. For saying you spread your legs for money, for slapping you in front of your daughter, for being everything you said I was, a coward, a thief, a liar, an abuser. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Siwu looked at Nia. Do you accept his apology? Every eye in the mall turned to her. Nia looked down at Kevin. This man who'd once held her heart, who'd promised her forever, who'd thrown her away like garbage when she'd needed him most. She thought about the nights she'd slept on the street, 7 months pregnant, wondering if her baby would survive. The terror of going into labor alone, the shame of begging for help from strangers. Then she looked at Siwu, the man who'd given her everything Kevin had stolen. Safety, home, family, love. No, Nia said quietly. I don't accept your apology, because you're not sorry you did it. You're just sorry you got caught. She turned to Siwu. Can we go home now? I want to take Maya away from this. Siwu nodded, then looked at Kevin one last time. You're fired, effective immediately. Hanwoo Industries will press charges for embezzlement. I've sent all the evidence to the police, the media, and Charlotte's father. Your visa has been revoked. Immigration will be contacting you within the hour. And I've made sure that every company in Seoul knows exactly what you are. He paused, letting it sink in. You wanted to be a father to Maya? You'll never see her again. You wanted respect? You'll be lucky to find work cleaning toilets. You wanted Charlotte's money? Her father just called me personally to thank me for exposing you before the wedding. Kevin collapsed completely, curling into himself on the floor. Siwu turned his back on him and gently took Nia's face in his hands, examining her injuries. Let's get you to the hospital. Make sure you're okay. I'm fine, Nia whispered. I just want to go home. Then home we go. Siwu scooped Maya into his arms. The little girl immediately wrapped her arms around his neck and put his other arm around Nia, guiding her through the parted crowd. As they walked toward the exit, Nia heard whispers. That's Kang Siwu. Did you see what he did for his wife? That guy is so screwed. She's lucky to have a husband like that. Outside, the motorcade waited. Siwu's men opened doors, helped Nia and Maya into the car, treated them like precious cargo. Inside the quiet luxury of the vehicle, Maya finally spoke. Appa, why was that mean man crying? Siwu smoothed her hair gently. Because he learned that actions have consequences, little one, and that some mistakes can't be fixed with apologies. Good, Maya said firmly. He was mean to Mama. Yes, he was, Siwu agreed. But he'll never be mean to her again, I promise. Nia leaned against Siwu's shoulder, exhausted and overwhelmed. Thank you. For everything. You don't have to thank me, Siwu interrupted gently. I'm your husband. Protecting you isn't something you thank me for. It's my privilege. My honor. I love you, Nia whispered. I love you more, Siwu replied, pressing a kiss to her forehead. 3 months later, Kevin's fall from grace had been spectacular and complete. He'd been charged with embezzlement and fraud, sentenced to 3 years in prison. Charlotte's father had sued him for attempted fraud against his family. Kevin's work visa had been revoked, and he'd been deported back to America to serve his sentence there. Every company he applied to found his name flagged in their systems. Every apartment he tried to rent rejected him. His social media was flooded with comments from people who'd seen the mall footage. It had gone viral, racking up millions of views. Kevin Thompson had become a cautionary tale, a meme, a symbol of what happened when you abandoned the people who loved you. Meanwhile, Nia's life had blossomed even further. Her business had exploded after the mall incident. Women all over Korea and beyond had rallied around her, buying her children's clothes, sharing her story, celebrating her resilience. She'd hired 3 employees and was opening a brick-and-mortar store. Siwu had started the process of legitimizing more of his business empire, using his power for genuine good now that the woman he loved could see all of it. And on a quiet Sunday morning, Nia stood in their penthouse kitchen, watching Siwu make pancakes while Junho helped and Maya supervised from her booster seat, and felt peace settle over her like a warm blanket. Mama, are you crying? Maya asked, noticing the tears on Nia's cheeks. Happy tears, baby, Nia said, wiping them away. Just happy tears. Siwu looked at her, understanding immediately. He crossed to her, flower on his hands, and pulled her into his arms. You deserve this happiness, he murmured. You deserve everything good in this world, and I'm going to spend the rest of our lives making sure you have it. I already have everything, Nia said, looking around at their family, chosen and built and fought for. I have you. I have our children. I have a home and a business and a future. 5 years ago, I had nothing. Now I have everything that matters. We have everything that matters, Siwu corrected. Because you're not alone anymore, Nia. You'll never be alone again. Later that night, after the children were asleep, Nia and Siwu stood on their balcony overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline. Do you ever think about him? Siwu asked quietly. Kevin? Sometimes, Nia admitted. But not the way you might think. I don't miss him. I don't wish things had been different. I just think about how losing him gave me you. How the worst thing that ever happened to me led to the best thing. His loss was my gain, Siwu said, pulling her closer. And I'll never take that for granted. Do you think he understands now? Nia asked. What he threw away? I think he's starting to, Siwu replied. But it doesn't matter. He made his choices, we made ours, and look where we ended up. He gestured at the city below, the life they'd built, the family sleeping inside. From nothing to everything, Nia whispered. From survival to thriving, Siwu added. From homeless to home. From abandoned to chosen, Nia finished. They stood together in the Seoul night, two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely circumstances, who'd built a family from broken pieces, who'd proven that love could cross any border and heal any wound. Kevin Thompson had tried to destroy Nia Thompson. Instead, he'd led her straight to Kang Siwu. And that was the greatest revenge of all. Not Kevin's destruction, but Nia's joy. Not what she'd taken from him, but what she'd built without him. A life. A love. A family. Everything he'd said she'd never have. Everything she'd deserved all along. If you love this story of justice, redemption, and love that conquers everything, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment telling me. What was your favorite moment? Was it the motorcade arrival? The public exposure? The apology scene? Or Nia refusing to forgive him?